time now, I've had ideas in my head that didn't quite fit anywhere. Ideas about building things properly, working with intention, and creating something that's actually mine. This isn't just a shed going up. This is about having my own space, a place where I can work at my own pace, without noise, without rush, and without compromise. A space where ideas don't stay ideas. They get designed, cut, assembled, and brought to life. This workshop is the foundation of a bigger goal: to turn craftsmanship into a brand, to build Samurai Joinery from the ground up, one decision, one cut, and one project at a time. So there'll be no shortcuts, no mass production, just honest work done with intent. So with that, welcome to the Samurai Joinery workshop build. Let's get to work. This part of the build started as I was coming towards the end of my apprenticeship. I was sort of at the stage where I was starting to think about what's next. After nearly 4 years of learning the trade of joinery day to day, I wanted to give myself room to grow outside of work. And for now, I think this workshop build will turn into a side hustle, something I'm building in the early mornings after work and on weekends. Yeah, so progress at times can look a little slow. Sometimes it can be just one wall sheet per session, and I know that my mum, she tells me, if I can get one post up, that's progress. So I aim to do a little bit each session and not exhaust myself too much. I found that keeping my machines in temporary locations and moving them around regularly isn't really practical, and it increases the risk of things getting damaged and such. So it's probably where the idea of the shed came from in the first place. Things were getting really tight in the garage, the carport basically, and I really needed to create a workshop that allowed things to be set up permanently and allow for decent workflow. For this big steel frame and wall sheeting, my dad's been heavily involved. He has extensive experience with steel structures and roofing, which are areas where my experience is, much more limited. Having that knowledge on hand has been really important for getting the structure straight, square and weatherproof. At this stage of the build, we're installing the wall sheeting with the internal insulation lining. So that means once the sheets are fixed in place, the shed is both enclosed and insulated in a single step. Now, because the sheets are large and fairly light, wind does become a bit of a challenge. Before fixing anything permanently, we're taping sections down to stop them lifting or shifting just while we get them positioned. To be honest, most of the time here is spent lining things up properly, making sure the sheets are square to the frame, sitting flat and aligned correctly before any screws go in. Once the first few screws are in, the sheet becomes stable. From there, it's just a matter of working methodically across the frame and fixing it off according to the spacing. You'll see us working one shed at a time, positioning, holding, taping where needed, and then fixing it permanently before moving on to the next one. It's a bit repetitive, but it's important to get it right. Every sheet sets the reference for the next, so accuracy early on makes the rest of the process a lot easier. And there it is, the first wall complete. Only a side wall, a back wall, and a roof to go. So with the first side enclosed, the next stage is installing insulation and wall sheeting on the opposing side. So the process here is largely the same, but as the structure becomes enclosed, the shed starts to function more like a working space. Beyond the practical need for storage and organisation, there are a few other reasons behind the build. The main one is having a dedicated place to develop work outside of my normal day job. The shed really gives me the ability to work consistently on my own projects, to design and build furniture at my own pace without needing to pack tools away or reconfigure the space every single time. It also creates a clearer separation between work, home and side projects. When time's limited, the separation actually matters. It makes it easy to focus and use the available hours effectively. Longer term, this space will be intended to support my own furniture work under the Samurai Joinery brand. The focus will be on simple, functional pieces with Japanese influences to begin with. They'll have clean lines, restrained details, and an emphasis on craftsmanship. Having a dedicated workshop really makes it possible. It allows machines to stay set up correctly, materials to be stored properly, and projects to progress without unnecessary delays. As the sidewall goes up, I'm already starting to think about how the space will be laid out once the shell is finished. In a workshop this size, layout matters more than square metres. The aim is to set things up so machines don't need to be moved constantly and materials can flow logically through the space. Cutting, machining, assembly and finishing all need to work together without crossing over each other. Getting this layout right early on saves time later. It also makes the space safer and more efficient to work in the long term. So once the wall sheeting was in place, the next step was fitting the door into the frame. Because the wall sheets were installed first, we needed to cut out the opening to suit the door size. The opening was measured and marked directly on the sheet. From there, the sheet was cut back carefully to expose the steel frame and create a clean opening. The door itself is prefabricated and comes with the kit, so that makes alignment more important than adjustment. Once it's in position, there isn't too much room for error. Lifting the door into place was a two-person job for sure. The unit was a little bit awkward and rather heavy, so most of the effort is in controlling it and keeping it square while lining it up with the frame. There's usually a bit of trial and error at this stage. Small adjustments, checking clearances and making sure the door sits correctly before fixing anything permanently. Once we were happy with the position, we fixed the door to the steel frame with the screws. The first fixings lock the door in place, and from there it's just a matter of checking alignment and finishing the rest of the fixings. With the door installed, the shed becomes a lot more secure. At that point, it stops feeling like a construction site and starts feeling like a bit more of a workshop vibe. And there it is, a nice clean looking sidewall with an entry door now. So the next phase of the build is the roof sheeting. Before the sheets go up, we prepare them on the ground. That mainly involves measuring, marking and pre-drilling the fixing points so everything lines up once they're in position. Pre-drilling makes the installation faster and more controlled. It reduces the chance of the sheet wandering as it's fixed and helps keeping the fixings consistent across the roof. Once the sheets are ready, it becomes a two-person job. I'm working on the ground, lifting and passing the sheets up, while my dad positions them on the roof and fixes them in place. Most of the effort here is manual handling rather than precision work. It's about keeping the sheets stable, getting them up safely and into roughly the right position before they're fixed permanently. From there, it's a repeatable process, again just like the walls. Prepare a sheet, pass it up, align it, fix it, and then move on to the next one. As more sheets go on, the roof comes together quickly and the shed becomes a lot closer to becoming fully weather-tight. While the roof sheeting is going on, this is a good point to talk about why the build has been sequenced the way it has. With any workshop build, the priority is getting the structure weather-tight as early as possible. Once the roof is on, the space is protected. Materials can be stored inside and internal work can continue regardless of conditions. Up until this point, a lot of the work has been about creating a reliable shell. Steel frame, wall sheeting, insulation and now the roof. None of it is particularly complex on its own, but each step needs to be done correctly because everything that follows depends on that. Roofing in particular sets constraints for the rest of the build. Water management, internal ceiling height, lighting positions and insulation performance are all affected by how the roof is installed. It's another reason why having experience involved at this stage matters. My dad's background in steelwork and roofing helps make sure things are done in the right order and with the right clearances rather than having to correct issues later. From a workflow perspective, this stage also marks a transition. Once the roof is complete, work shifts from external construction to internal setup. That's where layout, power, lighting, dust extraction and machine positioning start to become the main focus. The shed is being built to support furniture making, not just storage. That means thinking ahead about how materials move through the space, where machines will live permanently, and how projects can progress without constantly reconfiguring the workshop. And because it's a side project, sequencing becomes even more important. Work needs to be broken into stages that can be completed independently, without leaving things exposed or unfinished between sessions, which can last, a week or so in between. As the roof goes on, the shed becomes a controlled environment rather than a construction site. From here on, the decisions shift away from structure and towards how the space will actually be used day to day. Once the roof is finished, the next phase will be the internal fit out. Things like insulation, services, layout, and preparing the workshop for its real first projects. The next stage of the build is putting up an internal stud wall. As you can see, there's no real order to this one. Basically, this wall is being built to support future cabinetry and fixed workbenches. You actually might notice the external back wall isn't finished yet. It's kind of intentional, but I'd already sourced materials for this stud wall, and from a workflow point of view, it made sense to get it installed rather than wait. Because this is a side project, progress depends a lot on what materials are available at the time. This wall is structural in function, not just a divider. It's designed to carry weight, provide fixing points and create a solid surface for cabinets and benches to be fixed into. Hopefully, I'll give it that Japanese aesthetic and it'll look like a real dojo type fit out. The internal wall is built using 90 by 35mm machine graded pine and assembled with screws. It's a simple stud wall designed to support cabinets and benches, not to carry any structural load. The steel frame of the shed already provides structural support, so this wall doesn't need to be over-engineered. Its main purpose is to provide fixing points, create a solid backing for cabinetry. I'm hoping to fix the wall to the concrete slab at the bottom and tie back to the shed structure where I need. Stud spacing is set out to suit standard cabinet fixing points, which makes installation easier later on. I think using screws rather than nails allow for adjustments during installation and makes it easier to modify the wall in future if needed. It also helps to keep everything square as the wall goes together. Because this wall will eventually be lined and covered by cabinets, accuracy is more important than finish at this stage. The focus is on keeping it straight, plumb and securely fixed. Once the wall is complete, it defines the working zone for the storage and bench space. From here, cabinetry and workbenches can be designed and installed with confidence. As I fix the studs, I'm also checking that each one is flush with both the top and bottom plates. That keeps the wall straight and ensures the lining and cabinetry will sit flat later on. Taking the time to align everything properly now avoids problems further down the track. Once the wall frame was mostly assembled on the ground, the next step was standing it up and positioning it in place. At this size, the frame is manageable but awkward, and not something I'd want to lift on my own. We'll lift it clear of the floor first, then shuffle it across to its final position, rather than trying to carry it in one movement. It keeps it controlled and reduces the risk of twisting the frame or damaging anything around it. Rather than fixing it permanently straight away, we clamp the frame in place temporarily. That allows us to hold it upright and roughly positioned without committing to fine fixings. Leaving it loose at this stage gives some flexibility. It means we can make small adjustments once the remaining wall bays are framed and everything can be aligned together. Once the main studs are up, the next step is installing noggins. These are set roughly halfway up the wall to tie the studs together and stiffen the frame. Even though this wall isn't structural, noggins make a noticeable difference. They reduce flex in the studs and help the wall feel solid once cabinets and benches are fixed to it. Placing the noggins at mid-height also gives additional fixing points later on. It's useful for cabinetry, wall linings and anything else that needs to be secured without relying on a single stud. In a few areas where the spacing between studs is narrower, spacer blocks are added as well. These fill the gaps and help transfer load across the frame rather than concentrating it in one spot. Almost all of this work is about rigidity rather than strength. The shed itself is already structural. This will just need to stay straight, solid and predictable over time. Once the noggins and blocking are in, the wall behaves as a single unit rather than a collection of individual studs. That makes it much better suited to supporting fixed cabinetry and workbenches. While this part of the build is going on, it's probably worth talking a bit more about what this space is actually being built for. Longer term, the goal here isn't just to have a full workshop of machines. It's to have a space that supports furniture making, particularly simple pieces with Japanese influence. What I like about that style is the restraint. There's an emphasis on proportion, material choice, and function rather than decoration. This carries through not just into the furniture, but into the space that it's made in as well. Because of that, the workshop needs to be calm and predictable, not constantly changing layouts or temporary setups. That's why I've been focusing on fixed elements early on: walls, cabinetry, and bench space. Fixed infrastructure removes friction. Tools have a place, benches stay square. Work can be picked up and put down without resetting the entire space. It really matters when this is a side project. Time is limited, so the space needs to work efficiently without effort. This build isn't about maximising output, it's about creating a space that supports accuracy, repeatability and focus. As the workshop comes together, the aim is that it feels quiet and deliberate. A place where you can work through a process without rushing and without fighting the space around you. That's what this shed is ultimately for. Not just storage, but a controlled environment where ideas can be developed into finished pieces over time. Because this workshop is being built alongside a normal day job, time is probably the biggest constraint. Progress isn't necessarily fast, and it isn't meant to be. The goal here is consistency rather than speed. Working this way forces you to be deliberate. You plan your jobs so they can be started and finished in short windows, and you avoid work that creates problems later on. That's also influenced how I'm thinking about the layout of the workshop. This space is being designed around furniture making, not just machine placement. Furniture work needs clear assembly space, solid benching and predictable workflows. Machines are part of that, but they're not the centre of it. The aim is to move material through the space logically without constantly rearranging things. That's why fixed infrastructure matters early on. Walls that can take cabinets, benches that don't move, and storage that stays put. It reduces setup time and makes the limited hours more productive. Another part of this build has been learning outside my usual trade. Most of my background is in timber and joinery, but this project has involved steel framing, roofing, insulation and general construction work. There's real value in understanding how those systems work together, even if they're not areas I work in every day. It gives better context when designing furniture, fitting spaces out and solving problems on site. None of this is about rushing towards an end result. It's about building skills alongside the space and letting both develop over time. The workshop is a tool in itself, one that supports learning, experimentation and steady progress without needing everything to be perfect straight away. That's really what this build represents, not a finished product, but a platform to keep improving from. The final external wall to go on is the back wall of the shed. This one was left until later in the build for a couple of practical reasons. Up until now, having the back open made it easier to move materials in and out. Long links, wall sheets and framing timber can be brought straight through without working around door openings or tight spaces. Because this wall completes the enclosure, accuracy matters. Any misalignment here becomes permanent, so time is spent checking edges, fixing points, and overall straightness before everything is locked in. As the sheets go on, the shed becomes fully sealed from the outside. Wind is blocked, temperature becomes more stable, and the internal environment is much easier to work in. So that's where I'll leave this one. The shell is taking shape now, and the workshop is starting to feel like a usable space, rather than just a build site. From here, the focus shifts to finishing the front walls, the roller door, and starting the internal fit out. In the next stage, I'll be working on lining, layout, and getting the space ready for its first real projects. That's where this workshop starts to do the job it was built for. Thanks for watching. If you're interested in seeing how this space develops, or how it's used for future builds, feel free to stick around. I'll see you in the next one.